or at least keep it up to code. What happened there? Was that re-inspected to ensure the owner was keeping what his pledge was? Do you know?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So in 2014, and we're talking about 1855 North 21st Street. So just to be clear, that particular building, it's arranged with 5 bedrooms that could potentially accommodate up to 9 people. At the time of the fire, we believe 6 people lived on the premises. Back in 2014, violations were written for zoning and licensing. The case eventually went to court, and as part of the court settlement, the owner agreed to vacate the premises. Mm-hmm. It was inspected shortly thereafter, and the premises was determined to be vacant. So at that point, the code violation process had come to conclusion, and there no longer would be violations on that particular property. Mm-hmm. Sometime after 2014, we do not know when, the building was then reoccupied without zoning approval and without licensing.
And you've received no complaints about that property, that it was being,
No.
that we know? Okay.
There were no additional complaints.
So you had no reason, okay, all right. On the general issue of illegal boarding homes, what would make a place illegal as a, under that title, if you want, if you will?
In any of these cases, and in particular this one, you really have to look at 3 things. First of all, in this particular case, if you look at the prior history, if you looked at the way the water was used in the premises, mm-hmm. Based upon our inspection, it clearly was a rooming house, and the owner has a repeated pattern in doing these kinds of activities. So you have to look at whether or not there was willful intent to put people in harm's way. We believe that there was, so mm-hmm. we've referred this case over to the DA's office for possible criminal prosecution. So in any time when you're dealing with code enforcement issues, we always have to keep an eye out for that, and we also have to keep owners accountable for when they do put people in harm's way. So we will wait and see whether or not this rises to the level of criminal prosecution. So beyond that, you have to look at a couple things with boarding houses. Number one, zoning. And the interesting thing is that rooming houses are not allowed in residential zoning districts. I believe for that to be problematic. The issue being that this premises could never become legal because the zoning it wouldn't be permitted in this particular location. Mm-hmm. They would have to try to go through the zoning board, and as a result, the chances of them getting a variance are probably not that high. So what we think happens in some of these cases is that because you can't legally put these in residential areas, then what you're doing or what we're doing inadvertently is encouraging folks to create illegal rooming houses. They set these up because there is a demand for them. The rooming houses are probably some of the cheapest ways for folks to get a roof over their head. So there's a market out there. So unscrupulous operators will find locations and put these businesses in those locations. So I think we need to take a hard look at zoning mm-hmm. and whether or not we need to find ways of putting rooming houses back into residential neighborhoods so that we can start addressing.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what actually is the definition of a rooming house? So just so we're clear.
Right, a rooming house would be any type of residential occupancy in which more than 3 people unrelated by birth or marriage are cohabitating on premises. And that definition of what a family is goes back to at least 1950, if not before, right. And probably is somewhat outdated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, all right, I don't want to dominate here. Councilwoman Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to each of you. Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up on where you just were on the rooming, the rooms that are being rented, and I want to ask you, Commish, have we seen an increase in the number of cases reported on the illegal conversion of single-family dwellings? Are we finding that there are more being reported, or more we're just seeing more without them being reported by the public? I guess what I'm trying to see is whether or not people on residential blocks are communicating more, that they're seeing like a different pattern in the property. Are they calling us and letting us know?
We've had a few calls about illegal rooming houses, but I wouldn't say it's a huge groundswell.
Okay. So nothing significant that would raise a red flag for us, right? I mean, again, like you said, just a few calls to let us know when they've identified it, but nothing overwhelming.
Rebecca, speak it in the
Sorry.
please.
In calendar year 17, we got about 550 service requests for some type of rooming house, boarding house situation. And that's pretty consistent over the last 6 to 7 years.
So, and that was my question. Thank you, Commissioner. That was the data that we haven't seen a difference in the trend versus the data being sort of reported or the calls coming in. Appreciate that. My next question is in regards to funding. I mean, I'm a firm believer L&I is probably the most overworked and underfunded department in the city of Philadelphia. I'm talking about the demand that we particularly as district council members, that we place on L&I. Provide us an answer for the number of inspectors who are going out during off hours to look at unpermitted construction activity and to inspect nightclubs and other establishments. And I'll come back to why, because you just helped to save a region in the 9th Councilmatic District, because there was an inspector, it just so happened, available and on duty at that shift, and it was an off-beat time that had they not gone out, we wouldn't have been able to catch the people doing the work that they didn't have permits to do. How do we fare, Commissioner, if you would compare our staffing levels with other equally sized cities, municipalities?
I haven't personally looked at those kinds of apples-to-apples comparisons. I mean, it's been reported in other places that Philadelphia has less per capita building inspectors than other jurisdictions. We are aggressively have been hiring and staffing up the department. And like I said earlier, we increased from 333 to 375 employees total in the department. When we're completed our hiring up and our inspectors have sufficient amount of experience, we're going to take another look at what their real capacity is, and if we still have a gap in terms of the number of inspections that need to be done and whether or not we have suitable resources. But it takes so long to recruit, hire, train, and get these folks out on the street that I haven't asked for additional inspectors over the last couple of budget cycles, because we have already budgeted for more people than we've been able to hire at this point.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, and for Commissioner, I want to note, and I would note this for any department, because we lean hard when we're trying to get services in our district, and when things are not going well, I think, I know you'll hear myself and my colleagues who represent districts speaking, affirmatively in reference to supports for their people. But I want to speak with the same fervor and passion to publicly say thank you. Thank you from residents of the 9th Councilmatic District from every neighborhood: Mount Airy, West Oak Lane, Logan, Alany, Longcrest, Lawndale, Burholme, Oxford Circle. Thank you for being responsive when we call you. I don't know that we've seen a commissioner come out to more community meetings in the evening. Usually that is work that you send to other staff members to come out to community meetings, but we've seen you personally. Rebecca Swanson, who is at the table, and I'm looking for notes from my team who do the work, who specifically said, we need to note the people who have helped us help our people. Rebecca in helping us with legislation. We've had a major issue with dumpsters in the 9th Councilmatic District. Mr. Mike Fink. Bernice Johnson, I don't even know if she's here, but every town meeting we have in our district, in our neighborhood, she is there to answer the questions proposed relative to L&I issues. Jean Starworth, who helped us with understanding the rules and regs regarding a specific property. Christine Quinn, Anna Genhart, Maureen Blaney, and Betsy Baldwin. Some of these people I've never met, I've never seen, I've never talked to, but when my staff provided for me a list of the people they have had to call, talk to, and work with to get problems addressed that impact our residents, these were the names they gave us. And if they hadn't been doing a good job, Commissioner, I would be saying that out loud, so I just wanted to say thank you out loud for the record, too.
Well, we really appreciate that. Thank you for acknowledging the hard work of our staff. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Excuse me. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. I had a few questions I just wanted to ask. In 2016, I think that was your first year you started as commissioner, was it 2016?
Calendar year 2016,
Yeah.
correct.
What were the revenues generated from the fees of L&I?
Well,
Let's say the prior year, before you came in, 2015.
Yes. Good afternoon, Councilman. Kirk McLaren, Administrative Services Director. I have as far back as fiscal year 17 actual was $59.9 million. For 2016, I don't have that in front of me, but I believe
Any
it was,
recollection?
I believe it was about 54 million.
54. Any recollection of what it was the year before?
About 51 from what I
51.
recall, yes.
So in a period of two years or so, it's gone up to, this year is, did I hear 60 million?
we were just a few dollars short of 60 million in fiscal year 17. We'll be past that for
Right.
fiscal year 18.
So I guess my point is it's gone up almost 20%, the revenues of L&I, which, by the way, for people using the service of the city, that's fine. I'd rather have people who are using our services pay for those services than us have to continue to increase taxes. So I commend you for that. That's great, 20% increase. And when I looked over your budget, you're one of the few departments I don't really have a lot of questions for because you're doing a really good job.
Thank you, sir.
I'm looking at the payroll, for example. It was negotiated by District 33. The increases are 2.5%. I'm looking at your only increase is like $2 million for demo costs, which everyone wants to happen. It's really very, very efficient. And I hope other departments are listening because this is one of the first times I'm going to say you guys are doing an extraordinarily good job at this. And your department, yourself, and people here, I have no complaints whatsoever. But I do have a comment on something. I just want to ask if this is even feasible. I know St. Bonaventures, this is just a thought. We paid about $1 million to demolish this property, which had to be done. We sold it at sheriff's sale for $15,000. I know it's listed now for sale for $400, and it may only sell for $250. So I'm trying to think out of the box a little as to how could we possibly in the future capture some of the value that'll happen in the market versus selling at a sheriff's sale. And I'm not sure I have the answer. I'm not looking for the answer today. I just want to bring that out, that might be an idea we can come up with as to how do we capture more value. But, and I'm not looking for a response. But I just want to say that I appreciate what you're all doing. And I got to say that it's an amazing job. I would say in my time with the city, there's maybe one other person who's done as good a job as you have, and you may know who that is, which is Bennett Levin. But the difference between you and Bennett Levin, you're both excellent, is that you have the velvet glove. And Bennett said exactly what what was on his mind, which people, you got to love him for that. But you're doing a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. We appreciate it.
That was
Thank
quite a
you, Jim.
compliment not to get a host of questions from Councilman Dom. I think you know that. Yeah, right. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, please.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go to an area that is the New World Order in many ways. also known as Airbnbs. I believe it was Councilman Greenlee. Was this not one of your measures a few years back, Airbnbs? Okay, so background. The New York Times, Huffington Post have reported that cities and states, which we know across America, are struggling to regulate the short-term rental market dominated by services like Airbnb and something known as, which is new to me, vacation rental by owner. How about that? Homeowners become fearful of an increase in crime or changes in the character of their communities when addressing this particular concern, as has been, not notices, but alerts have come to my office. So the question is, what is the success rate of short-term rental units meeting life safety regulations as set by the city? Does anyone in your department, given the other gazillion tasks that you have to meet, how many short-term rental units have actually registered are owner-occupied? How many short-term rental units are owner-occupied? And what is the city's current enforcement plan on this new phenomena known as short-term rental units?
There are code requirements for short-term rentals, or Airbnb as they're commonly known. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's so many days a year you're allowed to do that type of activity, and you do not need a zoning permit, and you do not need a license. So an average person can rent out their property for short periods of time and not come under the city's regulatory control. In terms of collecting the taxes that are associated with that, my understanding is that the taxes are collected by the Airbnb company and are remitted to the city, though
And are
LNI is
supposed to be
not
permitted.
involved in that process.
Oh, really? So we have to rely on the Airbnb business outfit to submit those taxes to the city, is that it?
That's my understanding.
Point of information, if I could, maybe I can
Please,
explain that to you.
please.
In working this out, the thing that, the agreement was that they would have to pay, these people that are renting out would have to pay the hotel tax. Now, eventually, the owner of that property is responsible for the tax, but these Airbnb and services like that provide that as a service to collect the tax and turn it over to the city. But if somehow they didn't do that, the owner would still be responsible, if I'm making sense.
And so if they are responsible for paying the city the hotel tax,
Yes.
that possibly only happens if they have a permit to be an Airbnb. Is that fair to say?
Well, as the commissioner said, I don't believe you have to get the permit. It's if you, I think it's a little bit of a trust thing with a place like Airbnb, who is a national company, that it is in their interest to do this right, I guess is the best way to say
Do
it.
you know what the number of days might be, Commissioner? With the short term, that's a big word.
4?
What does it break down to? 2 days, 5 days?
Pardon me? 108 total in the year, right? Total in the year. And there is a limit, I think, for each person, each short-term rental, and I can't remember what that is. But you can't do it more than 180 days in a year.
And it's a growing phenomena. Have you had well, first of all, you need an increase in the budget, but do you have staff or professionals wherein this is their principal responsibility to keep a record on licenses, enforcement at all?
No, I mean, if you wanted to get set up to regularly be an Airbnb, you would have to get a zoning permit for it. It'd be handled just like any other type of
Is that
occupancy.
right?
Now, what my folks are telling me is that the rules say that you can do this 90 days in a calendar year, and you do not need licensing, and you do not need to have a zoning permit for that.
If you
But
do less than 90.
Less than 90. Once you go over 90, then you need to get zoning approval for a short-term rental.
Right.
Now, in terms of the revenue, that question may be best posed to the Revenue Department.
Okay.
I believe they know the mechanism for, and the collection rates for getting the hotel tax from the sponsor companies.
And in those, well, you may not have it now, but if you could forward to the chair, my office would be curious to know how many short-term rental unit permits or apps were released for 2017, just to get a reading on how this new industry is growing. That would be helpful.
I will certainly do that.
Okay. You are lucky to join us on what is known as Pay Equity Day. Did you know that?
Was not aware.
And doing an assessment on page 10 of your testimony, the findings are as follows. There are 97 total African-American men in your department, 122 white male full-time staffers, 81 African-American female full-time staffers, and 27 white female full-time staffers. And as is my custom, my staff and I look to see how well the government, not just this department, but how well government is doing when it comes to pay equity. And our findings say, and please correct me if we miscalculated here, that on average, black full-time staffers make on average $15,000 less than their white counterparts. And on average, African-American full-time women make $17,000 less than their white counterparts. And we know that the national average is that women make 80 cents to $1. So, you know, that needle has moved 1 cent in the last 5 years. So can you speak to that and why that may be? Does it have to do with civil service? What might be some of those factors that contribute to that seemingly inequity?
Yeah, I think a couple of the factors involved here is on the building inspection side has historically been predominantly a male-dominated type of profession.
Makes sense, yep.
And our demographics, our breakdown of inspectors shows that. The building inspectors generally are paid at a high rate. Okay. And that tends to skew the numbers in that direction.
Okay.
We have a clean and seal unit that does abatement work. They do labor type work. That unit is predominantly African American, and that type of work, the labor's work, has always been valued at a lower rate than skilled labor.
And so the building
I
inspectors,
think that also tends to pull the numbers down.
Okay, the building inspectors definitely are skilled in. Is that do they require a certificate? Does that require a license? What does that require?
Yeah, to be a building inspector in the city of Philadelphia, you need so many years prior experience in the building trades.
Okay.
You also have to pass a series of certification examinations, where to be a laborer, the qualifications are much less strenuous. Right.
Not as steep. Okay. Along those same lines, in your budget, you said that, no, it's budgeted for 429 full-time positions. However, only 375 were filled, leaving 54 vacancies. Speak to where those vacancies are, why those vacancies exist. Is there difficulty in hiring?
Yeah, those vacancies are primarily on our building inspector and operation inspector side of the department. We've been trying extremely hard to get those numbers up as quickly as possible. When I was here last year, I had promised that by the time I came back again, we'd be closer to 400. I would have been there, but over the last 3 months, we lost 20 people in the department, which in a department that only has 375 people is a pretty significant chunk of the operation.
That those 20 people lost were due to retired, or you say you lost 20 people? They moved on, or what? It's
several different factors. None of them were in the inspection class. We lost them through retirement, through promotion in other departments. We had some voluntary resignations. It was a whole host of issues which resulted in loss of 20 positions over the last 3 months. So we will continue our recruitment efforts. We do want to get fully staffed in the department. The workloads are heavy on the staff as it is now, and it's in everyone's interest for us to get to the number that's
I
budgeted.
bet so. Okay, I'll continue next round.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just for you were taxing my memory on that Airbnb issue,
Yes.
Councilwoman, but I will get you what information we have too. I do remember at the time that was used as sort of a model nationwide, our bill.
Is that right?
To try to find a middle ground on this whole issue. So,
Okay.
yeah, but
Appreciate
we'll
it.
get you more information too.
Thank you.
Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner Perry.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Abernathy, are you still behind that? Yes. Can you come up too? You know, that's the first place we look
Yeah.
for VIPs. Y'all do
Right behind that pole,
Right behind the
right?
pillars.
It's amazing.
That's
yeah.
amazing. They gravitate there. They're out of sight, out of mind. But what I wanted you to come up front for you to hear this as well. I want to echo basically the sentiments of Councilwoman Parker when it comes to you. Whether it's falling retaining walls in East Falls, collapsing hills in North Philly on Willard Street that they went out yesterday and started to shore up. This has been a responsive commissioner. Now, I don't evaluate based like Councilman Dom to look at every penny spent and how the lines and columns add up. I judge it based on concerns that come from my constituents that only your department can handle. And I appreciate totally the responsiveness. Even when you tell me no, it's a quick no. And I mean, really, when
Less
you...
painful that way.
It should be painful when you say no to us, but it's a quick no so that I know to look to other resources for that constituent. And I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say it in front of you. And so, to give you some of the accolades as well, because on that retaining wall issue, there was erosion that happened over years. It wasn't, anybody's fault, but it just is. And it's a problem that is citywide, that you're getting a lot of these retaining walls and other walls that are whittling away. And in the case of Willard Street, it has now encroached upon people's backyards. And so they're watching the hillside go out from under. Elle and I went out there, assessed the situation. It is not a perfect fix, but it gives folk in that block some sense that they're not going to wake up on a spring morning and find their back porch sliding down the hill. So I wanted to thank you for that. And you could stay and get some more of this, or I just wanted you on the record knowing that I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you, Councilman. I can certainly echo your sentiments about Commissioner Perry. He has been a pleasure to work with, and the department it manages itself, which is very nice.
So moving on to things that, to give you higher aspirations, how many vacant properties that are considered a issue, meaning imminently or somewhat dangerous, are there in the city of Philadelphia? And while you're looking for that, what is our average time to identify, once a complaint is filed, to decommissioning of that property? Have over time, over the past years, how are we handling? Is it up? Is it down? Is it consistent? And what about the time it takes to bring them down?
All right, they're good questions, Councilman. So the answers are, currently there are 13,502 vacant buildings in the city of Philadelphia. Out of those, 4,506 are considered to be unsafe, and 172 are considered to be imminently dangerous. Now, the trends have been heading in the right direction. In terms of imminently dangerous buildings, they've fallen by 23% over the last 2 years. And we are asking for additional demo money this year. We would like to eliminate completely the overhang of imminently dangerous buildings in the city of Philadelphia. We believe that if we get this funding within about a year and a half of the start of the next fiscal year, we will be close to eliminating the list of imminently dangerous buildings, and then we can start working backwards and dealing in a more strategic fashion with the unsafe buildings that are out there.
What is the average cost, what is the time it's taking, and what is the average cost now to bring them down?
All right, it takes, when we declare a building imminently dangerous, currently it's taking about 4 months to go from declaration to deconstruction. The average cost is about $17,000 for a row house.
That's not bad.
Now,
Is that down?
it's been creeping up, actually. It's about 17,000. The issue comes where every now and then we need to demolish a large vacant commercial property. And those can run about $1 million to do. And when that happens, it obviously completely disrupts our budget, and then there's that many of 50, 60 so of residential properties that we can't get to in that given year.
I recall once calling your office to bring down a vacant hotel on Lansdowne Avenue, and the kids were running in and out of this dangerous property as their playground, if you would. And you guys came out and took it down, and I appreciate it. Once we tear down a property, the stucco to the adjacent property, are we still doing that?
Yes, we are. If it's a party wall, we do treat the party wall with stucco.
And we no longer have the policy where we're collapsing the building down into the hole. We are actually removing the refuge and then putting clean fill in. Is that correct?
That is correct. Any of the organic material, any wood, anything that decompose is taken out. The base slab is broken so that there's drainage into the ground, and then clean fill material is put in its place.
How often do you get complaints from the adjacent property that there are leaks and damage to the foundation? Do you get a lot of that, and how do you address it?
Yeah, from time to time, we do get complaints from the adjacent property owner that they're getting leaks in their basement. Our standard policy is to refer them over to risk management where they can make a claim. If it's within, I believe it's 1 year, we can put them in touch with the demolition contractor and go against any warranties that are provided on that property. But a lot of times it'll be something that maybe occurs 5-10 years down the line, and we can only deal with that through risk management.
Understood. In most cases, are you taking the vacant lots and making them, fencing them? What is our standard policy? I know you do it from, or are you referring it to someone else to do?
Yeah, once it's down, our policy is just to put clean material in its place. L&I doesn't fence the property, and we don't maintain it afterwards. There is a program out there from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society in which they'll come in, they put a wooden fence in, and they maintain the property. They cut the grass. They'll plant grass and cut it and remove the litter that can tend to accumulate in these areas.
So one of the things I'm going to do, and this is my last round last line of questioning, is to work closer with Councilwoman Parker, and I believe it was last session, Councilman Green, to talk about driveways. That plagues my district and plagues other districts around the city of Philadelphia, I would imagine, in O'Neill's district and possibly Bass and Heenan's. We have these driveways that are the responsibility of private owners, but they're in such conditions that a small dog or big car can disappear in some of the potholes. Is there a overriding plan to address that?
There is a group that has been meeting from time to time to try to come up with an overall strategy for dealing with driveways, retaining walls, and even considering sidewalks. At this point, though, there is no final answer that we can provide the City Council.
Well, keep me and the chair and the rest of council informed. This issue, it's not your fault, but we've been kicking it down the road a long while, and we're running out of runway because particularly because of first responders. Our fire department, our police department, sometimes at high speeds, have to go down these driveways to get to an emergency. And in so doing, put themselves and others at risk because of the condition, the general condition of some of these driveways. So to come up with a better way to address that is something that I would gladly lend my vote too.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Taubenberger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to continue a little bit, if I could, Mr. Commissioner, on the dangerous houses, these imminent houses. You actually answered many of the questions I have, but I have one more remaining. Generally, and I know you explained that if you have a large building that has to be demolished, that skews the whole program, but on average, how many buildings do you think you now demolish a year?
We're in the range of about 550.
Okay, that's a fair amount, and you'd like to increase that, of course.
Yes, I think it's in everyone's best interest for us to get that number.
How
up
much
a
would
bit
you like
higher.
to increase it to?
Well, the extra $2 million will get us approximately another 100 demolitions, maybe.
And that way you'd
150.
almost be caught up. The other follow-up question is to the 172 that you had listed. How long have they been on the list approximately?
Those, generally, we're down to 4 months. You're on the list for about 4 months before we have to go in and demolish it ourselves. In some cases, an owner will come forward and then try to present a plan to either rehab it or demolish it themselves. So on occasion, some of them will go longer if there's a responsible owner involved.
And generally, when it's all said and done, you said it's about $17,000.
For a typical row house,
Yeah.
which is the large volume of what we demolish, it's about $17,000.
And generally, who pays ultimately?
Ultimately, the city obviously puts the money up front, and then we lien the property.
Right.
What happens after, once it's liened, I don't understand the mechanics of that, but from what I'm told is that that money would be paid back once the property sells. It's a lien against the property that stays with the property.
It would be at some point interesting to find, how much money comes back at some point. And I know it's not really your department, but maybe at some point, finance could provide that to us or somebody.
Councilman, I can say, and that is a revenue question, because we don't do
I
the
understand.
collections, but we do, we have constant collaboration and communication with revenue on that, to make sure that our liens are attached when they take a property to the sheriff's sale for taxes.
Right,
And
because
that money comes back in.
Yeah, that should go back in.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And in some cases, even if the property is tax compliant, and then there's a significant demolition lien, and the property has some value, revenue, we can ask revenue to take it just for the value of the demolition lien, without it being taxed, so that money will come back in. It's an ongoing process. Obviously, tax delinquency comes first because it goes to the school district, but there is collaboration to make sure this money comes back.
Thank you. And, well, I have other questions, but Mr. Chairman, while I'm kind of out of order because I wanted to make it flow from my colleagues' questioning, Airbnbs, if you could get me that information as well.
Getting it to
I would like
Councilman,
to
I'll
see
get you
that.
too, absolutely.
I see some very interesting things there. Also, I wanted to note for the record, and Commissioner, I would be happy to work with you on it and some other colleagues if it can be done, and that would be rooming houses, because believe it or not, when I moved into Burholme in 1960, there was a rooming house that was still there, coming back from the time of the Depression. But the woman, either she was grandfathered or Depression may have been before actual zoning in this city, so she may not have had to get the zoning, but she had a rooming house. And the neighbors, really, most neighbors didn't even know. And she kept it very well, and all the rooms in her house were numbered, which was kind of interesting to see. But I just wanted to make a note that in times of difficulty, people have gone to that, and it is a kind of a quick fix for someone that really needs a roof over their head, and something we should think about in doing it in a creative way. I also wanted to say, and that was how I want to begin my testimony, I really thank you and your department for all the hard work you do. It is greatly appreciated by this office, but I think every council member speaks well of you and your staff, and sometimes under difficult situations, without question. And maybe you should be funded more, and maybe we should take a little closer look at that. But that's up to us. How much training is required, and what kind of training is needed to be an L&I inspector? What do you look for?
Sure. Good afternoon, Councilman. Again, Kirk McLaren, Administrative Services Director. I can speak to the training for a building inspector. When they come in, upon hire, they're placed in a rigorous training program, and we have an outside vendor come in and provide prep classes for their first 5 certifications. So they need the building inspector certification, accessibility, mechanical, energy, and their plumbing certification. So they have to go through those 5 certification classes and then test through the International Code Council, the ICC. And then obviously once they obtain those certs, they need to maintain them through CEUs.
And when they come, they generally have to go through the classes?
Yes.
Suppose someone came in from another city, just for sake of argument, eventually, and they moved here and they applied for L&I inspector, but they've done some of these certifications. Does any of that work count?
It would. I don't know if I've ever seen that, but if someone came in with those certifications, they would, they would not have to go through them in that scenario.
And you've answered some of the question as well, but do you offer additional OSHA training to?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
we have OSHA 30
Yes.
that all of our building inspectors have now successfully gone through the OSHA 30 construction class. We also just began providing the OSHA 3500 demolition course to our building inspectors, and we've had 1 session of that, and we have some additional sessions coming up in the late in the spring, early summer. And we're also going to be, for the public, we're going to be providing OSHA 10 during May, during Building Safety Month.
Next question can be approximate because I'm not doing an audit here, but just so I think people have a sense. Approximately how many violations are given out by L&I over a year period, approximately? Well, any at all.
Pertaining to the 10-hour course, that's mandatory.
All right, that would be, let me get more specific. And that would be in requirements to the 10-hour work site training. Like workers that are in construction should have 10 hours of OSHA training. Am I correct on that or not?
Yeah, that's correct.
And in that vein, how many violations are given out?
Yeah, well, there's about 30,000 violations in total that L&I typically writes in a year.
Covering the whole spectrum.
Covering everything.
Okay.
In terms of doing the OSHA 10 auditing and compliance, we don't go out individually and card individuals. We have just started an audit program in which our audits and investigations unit will make arrangements, go out to a job site, and have the contractor produce those documents along with a list of the subcontractors. We then bring in the revenue department to look at tax compliance. But I don't believe we've issued any specific OSHA 10 violations yet.
I would assume, and knowing many folks in the labor movement, those unionized workers probably are all in compliance with that, I would think. And there probably are some non-union, unfortunately, workers building houses or buildings in Philadelphia. I would think that they might not be the ones that have the OSHA requirements. I would think. I'm not sure about that, but I'm asking you to kind of give a thought on that.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion one way or another. I mean, there's no reason why a non-union shop can't get the OSHA 10 certification. It's relatively easy. It's only 10 hours worth of training to do. We even offer that training to these
you offer
folks.
the training
Yeah,
too?
we offer it, yes.
Okay. So if somebody's not in compliance, you could actually give them a warning, so you better take the courses, and you can take them with us.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, if you would, just have one quick question, and that would be, with all the violations, the 30,000, how much revenue do you think that brings in?
Well,
Approximately. Yeah, if you can collect them.
Yes,
Which I understand. I'm not asking about collection. I'm asking about just what's out there as dollars.
the actual placement of a fine against an individual or a company that violates the code, that's actually done by a judge. We have to get folks in the court in order
Okay.
to do that.
Right.
I mean, we can do some research to try to find out how many fines have been assessed and to what level that's been done. I know the law department has taken on an initiative to try to increase the amount of fines that they get judges to impose on companies and individuals, because they obviously have determined that fining these individuals, has an effect as a deterrent.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Heenan.
Mr. Chairman, and I guess we are in the afternoon, so good afternoon, Commissioner. But before I do start to have a conversation and ask some questions and make some statements, I want to wish your Deputy Commissioner all the best and with, her soon-to-be birthing of a child, all right? And her absence will be surely missed by my office, all right, and me. But, look, we do want to wish you well and hope everything and everybody is healthy. But it's good to see you here. I know you are not only nesting at home, but you are nesting here on your job because you want to try to get everything possibly done as you can. Right? See, we got a little, you shouldn't, people shouldn't always hate on council, right? And be skeptical. We're okay. Although I see Mr. Fink in the back giving a little smirk like, I hate you all. Just joking. All right, Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and I appreciate your public service to the city and your long career here and trying to resolve issues, collaboratively. A couple things. So, right out of the gate, we are moving. Let me just go right to. We right now, our inspectors can only enforce what code, what year of our building codes, commercial.
It's the 2009 International Code Series.
So we are a city of first class, one of the largest cities in the nation. Right? We're the poorest big city in the nation. We're trying to, we have an uptick in development. We're trying to put together. We do not have an affordable housing plan yet, which I hope we can put together. But we can't enforce codes that are current. Is that correct? International codes?
That is correct.
All right. So the state recently just allowed the city of first class, which is City of Philadelphia, to adopt the 2018 codes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you guys have been working diligently in doing so. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we will be, we have a hearing coming up in L&I. How is that going to affect recruitment? Is it help or does it hurt recruitment of the vacancies in your positions?
It definitely helps with the recruitment because all the training that's offered out there revolves around the latest code series.
Correct.
And we can't train people in the current code and then have them go out and try to inspect on an older code. It's
You're not allowed
ludicrous.
to, right? Although developers and companies and marketers, or predatory marketing in certain areas and redlining in certain areas and other areas, even with affordable housing, they're promoting new energy codes and energy efficient, types of equipments and air testing and it's, weatherization, and we can't even enforce that.
No, we can't unless unless we're given permission by the state and it's adopted locally. We cannot enforce
Which we are
modern
about to
codes.
accomplish. So I know it's a daunting task, which leads me, all right, so to answer two things, all right? One, all right, it's happy finally, we've been through a lot. L&I has been through a lot. They've been through a lot of tragedies. And, through your leadership and some of the folks that have been there for a long time have really shaped the department into where we should be and where we're going in the future. In your testimony, you note that between, the goal for FY18 and 19 is an average of 375 permits per inspector. That seems to be a lot. How did that number come about? Is that a targeted number, or is that just an average? Or is that best practices through other cities?
That number is what we would consider to be the ideal. That should be the average for the inspection.
And how many
stage.
inspectors would be ideal for that? I mean, that seems to be a lot. And I'm leading into something, and I'm not really trying to trap you. I'm trying to help you and to note the public. How many properties do we? Well, I'll come back to that in a second. All right. How many properties do we have in the city of Philadelphia? Like 500 and
570,000.
All right, so almost 600,000 properties in the city of Philadelphia. New York has just under 1 million properties, 900 and some thousand properties. Does that sound about right? Not to be exact.
That sounds about right. Yes.
It's less or higher? Okay, so I believe it's around 900,000. All right. How many inspectors do we have? Property maintenance and building code inspectors combined?
All right, so we have 70 on the building side and 67 on the property maintenance side, so 137.
So you have 137. All right, they're going out, they have a caseload of a goal that's set because you only have 137, right? And then you have vacancies, and they're going out with like 5 books. I'm going to do the 209 code. I got 214 energy code, to keep up with council passes, and we got the demolition, special committee, and we got all these other books. So that's 137 with just under 600,000 properties. New York has close to 900,000 properties, and they have 2,300 inspectors. I bet their caseload's a little different. So, with that being said, what is your budget for this year?
Excuse me, Councilman?
What are you submitting in for your budget for this year?
The total budget for the department?
Total budget.
Our total requested budget is approximately $37 million.
37 million. What was it last year? Okay.
35.
So, how much more money did you bring in this year from last year?
In revenue?
In revenue. You brought in an extra.
We brought in an extra. If we project through the end of the fiscal year, probably another 5 or 6 million.
How much?
5 or 6 million.
So you generated 5 or 6 more million from last year to this year?
Yes,
I
that's
thought it
correct.
was a little higher. Okay, so
Yeah.
5 or 6 more million. And how much of that 5 or 6 million does the department actually see? Where does it go?
Oh, it all goes back into the general fund.
It goes into the
monies are
general
not
fund.
earmarked
Okay.
to the department.
Right, all right. I just, I'm sorry, I just had to get that out there. We have 30,000 violations per year. We have a caseload of 370 per person. We have all these properties, we got to go back and we have inspect and, we have vacancies. It just seems that, some more revenue should go back directly. So in other municipalities that I've checked across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the state, they have a building inspection department. Is that right? They have a building and enforcement department that's separate?
Yeah, most large cities do, yes.
Yeah, the most large cities, yeah, okay. So if I were to introduce a bill called let's just say, the L&I Enforcement, the municipality, wait a minute, Philadelphia Municipal Enforcement Department, which had your building codes and had X amount of dollars go back into the city, we might be able to reduce some of these permits per inspector, maybe get trained, maybe, instead of complaint driven, maybe be able to check that everybody's OSHA 10 trained. There's two types of workers on a site, right? There's correct me if I'm wrong, there's a licensed contractor, and then there's an employee of a licensed contractor, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and each one of them should have OSHA 10, so there are no 1099s.
That's correct.
That is correct, because that doesn't exist. The underground economy exists, but we're working on that. Can you explain again I think the program that you have in place, which I think is fantastic, where you're trying to cut down on the third party, people selling their permits. So if I am an individual who happens to be older in age, and I have no employees, but I pulled 200 permits, that triggers something in your audit program, right? And you're checking for employees?
That's correct.
That is because you're working with revenue, right?
Yes.
All right, so can you explain that program once more? Because I think that really gets to some of the underground economy that basically we're leaving money on the table, right? And it's not we only have 137 inspectors, right, to go out there and check. So must be really stressful for a lot of people to try to go back, every 45 days and check to see if things are being remediated and fixed and cured and everything like that. Can you explain that audit program again, please?
Yeah, if you mind, I'd like to bring up Deputy Commissioner Basil Miranda.
I think that's the innovation, right, that you're bringing to L&I for us when we have challenges of affordable housing plan without an affordable housing actual plan, but affording housable issue, and property tax increases and school district shortfalls and monies. I just want to make sure that people know that you're really trying to pilot your part and to recover some of that underground economy.
Yeah,
Please
I'll let,
identify
Basil
yourself. Yeah.
explain what his unit does. Basil comes from the State Attorney General's office, and what we're trying to do is use auditing capability in order to drive compliance. So let me have Basil Miranda answer your question.
Okay, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, Councilman, this is a joint...
Just state your name for the record.
Basil Miranda, Deputy Commissioner,
Sure.
L&I. Yeah. This is a joint L&I revenue audit program that we set up. On November 7th, we sent out 4,500 announcement letters to all licensed contractors in the city announcing this program. And for the first wave, we're going to focus on residential mid-level projects. Our program consists of a site visit as well as a document review, a document audit. So what we do is we'll send out an inspector to a work site, and that inspector will ask the contractor's employees for their license credentials as well as their OSHA cards and things of that nature. And if things are not the way they should be in those situations, then we request that that particular contractor submit documents from 3 different projects that they're conducting, and then we do a document review. To date, we made 10 site visits since December. We made 10 site visits, and we requested documents, meaning the contractor had to go to the next level on 8 particular contractors. And we're in the process of reviewing those documents now, and we're in the process of also referring, where appropriate, information and documents and contractor list to the Revenue Department to determine their tax compliance. So the program is designed to hold contractors accountable, also to make sure that they're code compliant, that the workmanship at the job site is up to speed, as well as making sure that they all are in tax compliance with the code.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Green, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to echo some of the commentary that was made by other council members, like Councilman Down and Councilman Parker, in reference to L&I. I know I've had a chance to work with the Commissioner in going to various community meetings, and he's all been very attentive in attending those. Also, I want to thank him for his work and supporting the efforts of the Special Committee on Regulatory Review and Reform by providing examples of legislation to help the code function more efficiently. We're trying to use the work that you provided that has been since passed in City Council as a model for other departments in reference to reforms that we can make in removing some of the burdensome legislation as well as regulations. So I want to thank you for that work. Councilman Jones earlier made a point about driveways, and just for the record, I just want to state that we actually do have a kind of a pilot concept we can use for driveways that we started with Councilman Tasco's district. The challenge has been getting the residents to buy in to that initiative, and that's been part of the challenge. The fact that we're dealing with private property, and although it is private property, city sanitation trucks have been coming up and down these driveways and causing additional damage to the driveways. Generally, I think other council members feel there's responsibility of the city to try to help this issue, but ultimately it is private property. That's why we were not able to use NTI dollars during the street administration or in the parts of another administration to actually just repair the driveways because they are private property. So I want to thank Councilman Jones for bringing up that point, and we'll continue to work on this issue. Commissioner Perry, I wanted to talk to you briefly about, I knew there was been some new regulations in reference to licensed beverage establishments. I know there's been information that's gone out. I just want to get your perspective because I've received some information that has raised some concern in reference to the inspection process for those establishments that have 30 to 49 chairs, which are a large establishment. And if you can kind of walk through that process, because I know information is going out to some of those establishments as we speak, and there's a deadline of April 30th for the food preparation license, which does expire. So if you can kind of walk through that process.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Rebecca Swanson. So quickly on the food license, we restructured before they were split at 50. So you were a large establishment if you had more than 50 seats, small establishment if you had 49 or fewer. We've moved that line to 30.
Right.
So the letters went out in January to every licensed, every food license, there's about 6,000 or 7,000 of them, saying if you are already a large, you need to do nothing, you'll be automatically converted to a large. If you are under a large but you want to be considered for a large, so if you have between 30 and 49 seats, please request an inspection. We will come out, we will count your seats, we will make sure you have a bathroom available for your customers, and determine whether or not you qualify for the large establishment license. We received about 600 requests for inspections. We've gone out to all of them. The health department has done some, L&I has done the majority. We reviewed their seating and their bathrooms. We also looked for, while we were there, we of course have to look for fire code and other types of violations. And then we have made a determination what license they're eligible for, and they're going to receive an invoice that matches what they are eligible for.
Okay. And will they have received that information prior to April 30th?
Oh yes, the invoices should already have gone out. So they should be getting that. Some people get their invoice electronically, some will get it by via mail.
Okay. Also, I want to follow up on another area when I thank L&I working with my office on the issue regarding short dumping, and they recently passed legislation to increase the fines for short dumping in the city, and that was a collaborative effort working not only with the Department of License Inspections, but also with the Streets Department as well as the District Attorney's Office. So I guess my question is, what would be ideas from you, Commissioner Perry, or others from L&I about taking next steps? Because I think part of the challenge is how do we identify those, even though we have increased fines, we've also taken some additional measures from a legislative perspective that require some equity actions. If you're found guilty, you will actually be required to clean up a similar size lot if you're found in violation. But what are some of the best practices that you've seen in other cities to deal with the issue of short dumping and trash in the city?
Yeah, Councilman, for the most part, the issue of dumping and cleaning up the lots, the cleanup is actually done by CLIP, and so I have not had conversations with other cities because it's done by a different department here in Philadelphia. I'd be happy to reach out to CLIP and get their views on where they think the next step should be. But when it comes down to in terms of short dumping on private property, having violations written and then having that particular violation abated, that falls under CLIP's jurisdiction.
I agree, but in reference to ideas you may have from an enforcement perspective, what additional steps can we take to try to use the new legislation or just other tools that L&I has at its disposal to do a better job of addressing dumping in the city?
Yeah, if it's...
Councilman Brian Abernathy, Deputy Managing Director. I think to the Commissioner's point, this isn't really within L&I's purview. It is within the Streets Department's purview, and we're in conversations with the Police Department about increased participation and enforcement with the District Attorney's Office.
Okay, I will come back during the Streets Department testimony to raise those issues.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Oh, my. Okay. Councilman Heenan raised this question around recruitment for those vacancies. Can you speak again to what your strategy is for the recruitment of the vacancies you spoke about?
Yes, so in terms of our overall recruitment process, when we're looking to fill exempt positions, we work with human resources to put announcements out to the job boards. If it's not a position that we already have an individual within the department that would be earmarked to take that position. Mm-hmm. So we make sure that we have a diverse hiring panel and that the job announcement is made to as wide to hiring boards that are available to us. In terms of internally, when we hire building inspectors, we've in the past have reached out to different various media outlets, including Aldea. As a matter of fact, Councilwoman Sanchez went on the air to put out the announcement you were hiring building inspectors. We worked through WURD to get the announcement out into the African American community that we were hiring. We do our best to get the word out there when we were hiring, and we try our best to recruit from as broad a base as possible.
I appreciate your thinking outside the lines and looking to non-traditional means of getting the word out. On the issue of customer service, according to your budget testimony, 93% of customers at L&I are served within 45 minutes. You state in a footnote that you expect that percentage to decrease, and I quote, while phases 3 and 4 of Eclipse are implemented. implemented as wait time may increase before they eventually stabilize. So does this mean that the electronic system is making a difference for the manner in which you're able to, or for the expediency that we're seeing there in your office handling customer service matters?
Yeah, we think that the vast majority of routine L&I transactions can be handled electronically, can be handled over the internet, and that's the direction that we're really trying to go towards. We recently did that with our rental license renewals, where we had people had to renew either in person or electronically. Electronically was where we wanted them to go first. And if they couldn't do that, then we would help them through the process in person. What that did was allow us to not have to deal with mail-in applications anymore, which are extremely time-consuming on our part, and delay the issuance of the license. So we see a day when 90% of routine L&I transactions can be done electronically without any need to come downtown or interact with an individual employee.
Okay.
That's our model.
Okay. I believe Councilman Greenlee spoke about unsafe properties identified by the city and the fact that they've risen. And in the testimony, did you cover that already, Councilman?
I don't think that
I
was
don't need to
me. I
repeat
don't know if
myself.
somebody else, I did not do that.
Okay, so let's follow through. So there are approximately 130 more unsafe properties identified for the first quarter of this year than that number last year. Why do you believe we're seeing an increase in the number of properties deemed unsafe?
In actuality, the number of unsafes and imminently dangerous are decreasing.
Two different things?
Yeah, the unsafes are buildings that have certain elements that are in a state of deterioration, where imminently dangerous are ones that are in a state of collapse. They're ones that we need to act on right away and that we need to demolish or have the owner come forward and fix immediately. The amount of imminently dangerous buildings has decreased 23%. The amount of unsafes overall is down about 700 from where we started at the start of this administration. We are actually heading in the right direction.
Okay.
But we're fearful that the number of imminently dangerous is still too high for a city of this size, given the danger to public safety that they pose.
So if you've been able to identify and separate imminently dangerous from unsafe, does that mean that you have a mapping, you have technology that has allowed you to map those types of buildings across the city?
Absolutely, and I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca, who can explain this in great detail.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman. So we have, in the past several years under Commissioner Perry's leadership, really increased our data analysis and our geographic information system, so mapping. So if there's an increase in the number of unsafe properties, it's because we're doing a much better job finding the ones that we never knew about before. We use some flyover imagery, some street level imagery, so we're able to see roof holes in a building that from the street looks completely fine, but has a huge hole in the roof. And we never would have known, no one has called us, no one's told us, but we can see it using these new programs that we're able to analyze, and we can write that unsafe violation, and we can start to address it before it deteriorates to the point where it becomes imminently dangerous. So we're really focusing on looking at those unsafe buildings, and if once we get the imminently dangerous list down, we'll be able to start tackling the most unsafe of the unsafe, so that they don't become imminently dangerous and require immediate emergency demolition.
That's exciting. I am not a district council person, but I would suspect that information may be of interest to district council people who have town meetings and the like, and they can inform their neighbors that XYZ exists in our councilmatic district. You just need to be aware. So that's just an afterthought for members who like to keep their residents informed at their individual councilmatic town hall meetings and the like.
Absolutely. We're happy to share any of that data anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Heenan?
Thank you, Chair. I was looking over at my colleague over here. He's like, I thought he was next. But yeah, I think you're.
He's cheating, but we won't
You're-
talk about it. Okay.
Usually we're texting each other, all right, but your LiDAR, I think, technology really made a significant improvement on the priorities that the department has taken. You know, I think, one of the things, I guess, nothing beats boots on the street, and your inspectors, once they're identified, to see, if they're owner occupied or not, all right? And I think that's, the biggest challenge that we have. How many clean and seals have you done, and have you seen an increase on clean and seals over the last fiscal year, or anticipate moving into FY19? And while you're looking for that, if I can ask Rebecca, you're talking about unsafe and eminently dangerous. Is it a natural progression that unsafe becomes eminently dangerous? Is it because of, it's just because we have an older housing
Exactly.
stock?
We have the oldest housing stock in the country by, about 82 years average for row
Exactly.
house, and I think Detroit's the next closest with about 60 years. If an unsafe building is not remediated by the owner, it will eventually become imminently dangerous. Right now, we think it's about 4 years from the time that we discover it to be unsafe to when we determine that it has been upgraded to imminently dangerous. But of course, that depends on the type of unsafe violation. If it's a roof violation, it probably will, if there's a hole in the
Deteriorate
roof, it's going to
quicker,
deteriorate
faster,
more
right.
quickly because of the water infiltration.
Your analytics are on spot on.
Yeah,
I
it's,
think,
it's not going to, an unsafe is never going to not become imminently dangerous without intervention.
Correct.
We don't have the clean and seal numbers in our budget, but
Okay.
I'll be happy to put them
That's
together.
fine. If you could provide that to the chair,
Sure.
like how many we did last fiscal year and what we anticipate this fiscal year, because it goes to, again, what I think we all should know as a city, know that, on an average, our housing stock is old. All right, well, an average of 82 years old. We're talking about having an affordability housing plan, right? And our houses are falling down and are unsafe and eminently dangerous, and we need to, we're constantly, concerned. Council President Clark and Councilwoman Parker with our basic systems repair, to really try to just Band-Aid things together when we have we're rebuilding neighborhoods and they're old, right?
Yes.
And they need a lot of TLC. With that being said, when it becomes what is your rate of notification return that you are aware of? Like your notification, do we have good and correct data showing that the owner of the property are receiving notices? This will eventually lead
yes.
into the law department.
So that is unfortunately one of the hardest things is a lot of the unsafe in ID, both anecdotally and in our data, the owners are deceased. Or as a corporation that has since gone defunct and we can't find anybody. We have a dedicated research team of 5 people who are constantly trying to find off-site addresses and trying to track down these owners, particularly corporations, try to find their principals, try to find them at their home address. And then we do send out certified mail for unsafe and ID properties. We can get you the number of how many of those we get back.
And then were those who, in addition to have multiple property NOVs, property maintenance violations, how many are we pushing over to the law department to take to municipal court or equity court?
How many violations are we sending a year?
Yeah, or a month. Do we have a target of, because I know per week, the municipal court is able to take 200, 250. All right, so all I'm saying is we have 30,000 violations, we have unsafe, unfit, we have eminently dangerous. Thank God the administration sees it, a priority to put $2 million in for demolition. And I just want to make sure that everybody's that we're working together with that same sort of leverage, and having the law department, having whatever you have over to the law department, so we could push it over to the courts, who are just like the sheriff's office, they're sitting back and saying, hey, just bring it to me. All right, and then we'll collect our fines, all right, that are due to the city, so we can generate our revenue, and more importantly than the fines, all right, making the property safe and holding property owners accountable. All right, so maybe I could talk to you offline on that process, and if we can reprioritize along, since you've alleviated a lot of things through technology, through the LiDAR and through your auditing process and your enforcement program, which is outstanding. If we could push things to court a little quicker, I think that would help, maybe not have to, appropriate another $2 million, because we won't get that far. So it's the broken glass theory. So, but again, you guys rock, you're the best, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Last question. In certain departments, tried to pay close attention to the issue of, or factor of, sustainability, and with the new, with the department beginning the enforcement of the new 2018 building codes, can you speak about expectations around energy efficiency, sustainability of structures, and in this new building codes, expectations around energy efficient systems, stormwater management, and eco-friendly materials? Do they factor in at all with the new building code?
Yes, they do, Councilwoman. In fact, the 2018 code series puts a lot of new energy requirements onto new building construction. So we think it's a giant leap in order for the city to meet its goals to be an energy efficient city. So we're really pleased that the building codes are heading in the right direction in terms of promoting and requiring energy efficiency in all buildings.
Have you ever been invited to speak with BOMA or BIA so that they too are aware that the city is leaping ahead in this area of environment and sustainability?
Yeah, we regularly speak with BIA. We put a representative at their meetings, and we're always available to talk to them about the codes. We ask them for support to adopt the new codes.
Very good.
We also meet with BOMA on a regular basis. In general, people support the newer codes because they allow for new materials, they allow for innovation, and they also achieve greater societal goals such as energy efficiency.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your important work. The district council members adore you, and so do I.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. That's no further questions for AY. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very
everybody.
much. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
Our next department is OIT.